Hello, welcome to this episode of Our Experience with your co-host Tom Hansel and your CEO Chad Wers. And we are sitting here today with a young man that we've asked to be a guest on this podcast today. Let me start off by kind of setting the stage here a little bit. You know, as pharmacists, as pharmacies, our number one objective is to make sure we get the right drug to the right patient when they need it. And at the end of the day, it seems very simple, but it takes all kinds of different things that we've got to coordinate and manage to be able to do that. We've got to make sure the drug supply chain's not disrupted. We've got to make sure that we've got full staff and they're able to be there on time. We've got to make sure that we can transport and deliver the medications. We've got to make sure we can communicate properly to our nursing homes, to our patients, and other members of the team. It's all doable, and we manage that every single day. And we try to prepare that if one of those areas kind of collapses in some ways, that we're going to be able to overcome it. But what if I were to tell you that you were on an island, doing pharmacy on an island, and there was a hurricane category 5 headed your way? This is talking about 155 mile per hour wind, significant rain. And that's what happened to our guest here, Sultan Yassin, from MedPlus Pharmacy in Puerto Rico. And so, Sultan, welcome. Before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your history there with MedPlus?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here. So MedPlus Solutions was started in 2011. We started as Puerto Rico's first closed-door long-term care pharmacy. We wanted to bring all those special of that attention that those long-term care patients need. So we started off primarily on the mental health and disability and the assisted living side. And at the time of the hurricane, we had 5,500 beds, and today we service over 12,000 beds. A lot of that growth came because we were prepared after that storm to really service our patients and service the needs of facilities that weren't even our clients at the time. So, yeah. Being prepared really does pay off. So happy to be here.
So that's what we want to talk about today, emergency preparedness. And some of us prepared, for a snowstorm or something of that sort. But, you're talking, this is a major, major hurricane, and it's headed right towards you. And I remember you telling me is you actually were in the States. You weren't even in Puerto Rico when you realized that hurricane was definitely coming.
So yeah, I was actually up here in the DC area. I was at the NASP Specialty Pharmacy Conference, and I was watching all the news reports about the storm headed to Puerto Rico and all the devastation it had caused on the Lesser Antilles. So I had to decide to fly out, and actually flew out the morning of the storm. I arrived into San Juan Airport at 2 p.m. San Juan Airport closed at 2:13, so I just made it in, kind of photo finish. But that was important for me. I wanted to be with my family, obviously, and be with the team, no matter what was going to happen.
So give us some context. I'm wearing my Puerto Rico hat. Not really.
Very
it's close. It's very close. So my Ohio hat. But Puerto Rico is as close to a state as I think you can get without being a state. It is America. Yes. I mean, for all intents and purposes. So just give us some context. How many people live in Puerto Rico? How many nursing homes are there? Is the structure similar to what we have here? When you talked about IDD and assisted living, are those things similar?
So Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. All Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, so no passport needed to travel. A little plug for tourism there.
There you go.
Healthcare structure is very similar. We have same payers, or Medicaid, Medicare are predominantly the biggest payers on the island. And our structure is very similar. The one difference we have is we don't have quite as many SNF beds as you would have in the States, with a lot of those functions not being transferred over to some ALF. So we have like high acuity ALF that is closer to SNF than a traditional ALF in the US would have. But overall population size, we've got about 3.3 million people living on the island. So a relatively large population. And I think we would rank maybe 20th or in the 20s if we were a US state in terms of population size. So significant.
And what you said, the assisted living is more the anchor of long-term care. Does Medicaid pay for assisted living, or is it still sort of that hospitality model?
So it is more of the hospitality model. Medicare will not pay for those services. There are certain state agencies that will help assist in the payment of those services, but it's mostly home health services that are coming in. So it's a hospitality model, but they have within their facility spaces to allow physical therapy and other services that would normally be done in a skilled facility happen at the ALF.
Gotcha. Awesome.
So the hurricane, you land, Category 5's coming. I'm sure you hightail it to home.
Well, actually, my wife's going to kill me when she hears this podcast, but I hightailed it to the pharmacy, made sure all the shutters were there, everything was shut down, we were ready, and then after that, I hightailed it home. But yeah, we kind of hunkered down at my father's place. He's got a pretty bunker-like home with a generator and all that stuff. So we hunkered down there for about 12 hours. And it was 12 grueling hours. You know,
Yeah.
We were hearing 155 mile per hour winds, batting up those trees. And if you looked outside the window, it was just things flying around. I mean, normally Puerto Rico it's a tropical island, you know, very green, very lush, very beautiful. I remember walking out after the storm. It was all brown. I mean, the winds had grass was torn out. It was.
We're talking like a mountain that's nothing but green.
Nothing. Yeah,
brown,
exactly.
just gone.
That's all brown. Everything was green. Everything that was green was replaced with brown. It was very depressing.
Oh yeah.
So.
And my understanding is around 80% of the power across the island was knocked out in 12 hours.
So actually, the whole island was out.
Whole island.
So 80% of power lines went down.
Oh wow.
Yeah, including all the high transmission, high voltage lines that we have. So the island was completely dark for about 16 hours. The government was able to reestablish some services for essential command and control type services within the next 24 to 48 hours. But you had every major hospital basically running on backup power at that point, which was a real challenge because there was enough fuel on the island. You know, there was enough diesel available for everyone. The problem became, how do you move it? So essentially for the first 2 weeks, every diesel carrying truck was just ferrying diesel to hospitals because that was obviously the essential,
Sure,
you know, the most essential service. But everyone else had to pretty much fend for themselves in terms of getting fuel and supplies. So very, very big challenge.
So I'm sure the roads were not impassable for a long time as well.
Yeah, roads. So I think the biggest challenge was, you know, getting back to a basic operating module, and there were really 5 challenges there. Electricity obviously was the biggest. Access to the logistics, you know, the highways and the roads was very important for 2 reasons. One, you needed to get medications out to patients, but you also needed your employees to come in. So that was another big challenge that we had, and you know, we had to kind of go old school. Radio stations became really popular because, I mean, people had cell phones, but most of the cell towers, the ones that survived, because the winds knocked down about 80% of cell towers as well.
Jeez.
People ran out of batteries.
Yeah.
And, you know, they were stuck in a storm for 16 hours, so they weren't thinking about, let me save some battery life.
Right.
You take a cell phone away from my kid for 2 hours.
Yeah.
They can't handle it.
So we ended up going to radio stations, and most companies started to announce, hey, we're resuming operations, or we need staff here. And so radio became really, really important.
Interesting.
And that was how we were getting messages out to our team. And we started a relay system. So a lot of roads were impassable. But, you know, some of our drivers were in the Puerto Rico National Guard, and they were obviously called up as part of the emergency. So they were feeding us kind of real time. Hey, you know, these roads are accessible, these are not. So that was very helpful. But there were definitely significant challenges. One of the proudest moments for us as a company was one of our drivers was going to, take medications to one of the nursing homes that we were servicing, and he got to a road closure, and he actually parked his car on the side of the road and walked for 35 minutes
Oh, wow.
just to deliver the meds. So really, my hat goes off not to the entire team, because it really was a team effort to make sure that we were able to do everything and get. For me, it's amazing that out of the 5,500 or so patients we had, we only had 6 patients go off therapy in that entire period.
Oh, wow.
So really, really proud of that.
How did your customers respond? Were they patient with you guys, or did you have a few difficult ones there? Expect you to be Superman?
It was a challenge. You have, as with everything in life, you have some folks who are more understanding than others. One of the decisions that we took early on was we looked at our inventory supplies and we started mapping things out. And we knew our wholesalers were down, so we called them like, when do you think you're going to resume operations? And everyone told me 2 weeks, and I was like, well, probably be like 3 or 4 weeks, because so we had to look at our inventory, and at that point we took a slightly controversial decision. We said, we're going to service weekly to our facilities, because the inventory we did have, we knew we could stretch it out and service everyone for a month and really not have, but we wouldn't be able to do that if we were servicing
30 days at a time. Yeah,
or
makes sense.
So we caught a lot of flack for that decision from some facilities. Some heads of nurses were like, well, state emergencies agencies are saying we should have 90 days of meds on. They don't understand long-term care. They don't understand what's going on. So yeah, we did catch some flack for it, but that decision proved to be the right one at the end, because we were able to cross that shortage of drug deliveries and really service everyone. So some people were more understanding than others, and you try to explain things.
Yeah.
But it's a hit and miss in that regard.
We're talking about a situation where I think somewhere around 4,000 people perished in that hurricane. Of course, several hundred had the ability to move out and go to the States. And so, as far as your staff, kind of like, what was their mentality? Were they, they had families at home that obviously didn't have power, but they were deciding to come in and put the patients' lives first? Yeah,
staff. Dealing with staff was one of the hardest issues, and the reality was that it's tough when you've got your family at home, and they're lacking for pretty much everything, and they decide to come in and work. So in the immediate aftermath, we were up and running 24 hours after the storm. I think the first day we were running with around 10 or 15% of our staff.
Yeah.
That slowly, progressively started to increase. It took us about 3 or 4 weeks to get back to normal staffing. And we basically told our team, hey, what's your situation. Don't come in unless you feel comfortable coming in, right? But the staff that did come in, we did everything we could to make sure that they had everything they needed, both them and their families. And, something as simple as food, right? I mean, supermarkets were closed.
Yeah.
No communications, ATM cards don't work, right? So we actually started like catering. We figured out some local food restaurants that had some capabilities. And it wasn't full feast, but we had breakfast, lunch, and dinner for everyone, and they could get clean water, and people were bringing in cell phones for their family members and like charging them at the pharmacy, because we had our redundant generators there, and we were able to kind of make sure we had power. So we were taking staff, but then about a week into it, it was like, well, there were no gas. There's no they need gas. They need gas to get to the pharmacy. So we had to kind of work with folks that we knew in the community and owners of gas stations, and there was rationing, and there were curfews, and so we had to work with them and kind of get special hours for our employees, and we'd set up a little caravan. So it was like, okay, you know, Tom and Chad, you guys are on the Tuesday run. So Tuesday at 5, you leave the pharmacy early because curfew was at 6, and you're going to arrive at this gas station at 5:45, and you're going to wait till the last car drives off because you don't want to cause pandemonium with these special treatments, you know.
Yeah.
And then you drive in, fill up your car, and you drive away. So a lot of that was happening too.
That's crazy.
So, a lot of little coordination, things you really don't anticipate or don't plan for.
Because everything's gone.
Everything
you know.
is gone. Yes.
Yeah, it's difficult.
So.
Did it devolve at all? Like, did society devolve to become Lord of the Flies? Like, what was it like? Obviously,
run
you
up to the
described
mountains.
what's like for your staff and your team. What about the rest of the island?
So for the most part, I have to say that the community did come together.
Good.
For the most part, there were some isolated incidents here and there where, you know, one of our group homes for IDD, in the middle of the night, someone came in and stole their generator.
Oh, that's nice.
So, and you know, so there were some isolated incidents,
Yeah.
and I think desperation drives people to do some really crazy things. But for the most part, I was actually pretty surprised. It's just, you know, I thought everything would kind of fall into like this chaos or Lord of the Flies type situation, but no, it was people held together, and I think everyone was in the same boat, right? You know, and for the most part, people were pretty understanding and aware that, you know, this isn't something that is a normal phenomenon. It's not something under anyone's control. So they cut you some slack in that regard. But definitely planning ahead was very important.
Yeah.
So I remember when we put in, our pharmacy had different fiber optic connections from 3 different providers through 3 different routes. And most people were like, that's overkill, you know.
Right.
And lo and behold, only one of those survived. So if we had only 2, you know, who knows? Maybe we
Or the
would
wrong
have
one.
had connectivity. And I remember when we put in we have an on-premise 1,000-gallon diesel tank. So that gives us power for about 10 to 14 days. And everyone's like, that's overkill, you know. You don't need that. Most generators, when you buy them, they have a 100 or 200 gallon built-in tank. So really taking those precautions and having that set up helped us overcome a lot of the hurdles, which some other folks maybe have to struggle a little bit more with.
So those are the things that you were happy you were prepared for. What did you learn for the next time? Like, what would you say, okay, having gone through that, here's what else we need to be aware of next time?
Well, I think for us, the 2 biggest things or maybe 3 things that what we took away was, 1, we needed to have our own capability of transporting fuel. Although we had 10 to 14 days, we need to work around securing the supply chain around power. So we actually bought a little diesel trailer now, so we could, because the diesel was available, you could go and buy the diesel. It's just, how do you move it?
Yeah.
So we now bought this little trailer that we can attach to any pickup truck and kind of move diesel that way. We also had to buy supplies for our generator, so like filters and oil, and, you know, because those things aren't designed to be running continuously. They're designed to run a couple of hours, but you actually have to stop those things, do maintenance on them. So all the planning around the maintenance. So from a power side, we really, although we had prepared, we still felt we weren't adequately prepared. So we had to add some more. And then I think really on the staffing side was another area that we had to really we improve on. So we revamped our call tree structure. So we have an actual call tree process in place. We now know we have pinpoint locations that we'd request our staff to update prior to any storm, so that we know where they live in case we need to get to them, or just to check up, check on how they're doing. So we had power, electricity, and the last area was probably inventory management. You know, that decision to do that 1 week cut down. We've since instituted a standing order that's always ready, so that we can submit it and push a button. So if we have that level of storm headed our way, we just hit that to our wholesaler and kind of get this last shot of inventory in before storm hits. So
That's awesome.
I remember when this hurricane hit, for our effect, at least in the States, was 70% of the normal saline bags that were manufactured in the world was manufactured on the island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And so we were all upset because we had to make our own normal saline bags, from our perspective. That was the worst it got for us, though.
Yeah.
How do you think that industry fared? Is it back?
So I mean,
Is it now prepared?
Puerto Rico is traditionally
It's only 60% now.
has been a very heavy manufacturing site for most manufacturing for pharmaceuticals particularly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were Amgen particularly and AbbVie were probably very prepared. They were, I mean, we call them republics, right? They essentially ran their own
Government.
They had their own. I mean, they had their own power. They had their own food. It was just these little islands. So they were certainly prepared. I think any facility that was not physically damaged, at least from the manufacturing side, was prepared and continues to be prepared. So
Good.
So your actually reputation got better, so to speak. Not that it was bad, but when you were able to respond in this situation, that became noticed. Like you were telling me that you were actually able to supplement other pharmacies that maybe couldn't do it because they weren't prepared, and that actually helped your reputation.
Well, yes. So it's hard to be happy, when tragedy strikes. And the first few days it looked like very bleak. A lot of our facilities couldn't really handle the patients, so they started calling up family members and saying, "Hey, you got to take them back because I don't even have power, I don't have food, I don't have any." So what looked like a drop in census, eventually kind of turned around. And you have to remember, some parts of the island were without power for 6 months.
Man,
we have employees that worked with that were coming in and they were going home to a dark house. No
6
power
months.
for 6 months. And that includes certain pharmacies that, maybe they had a generator, but like they were 2 or 3 months, without power, but they didn't have the wherewithal to, secure fuel. So what ended up happening was, particularly with insulins became very scarce. A lot of facilities had diabetic patients that needed insulin. We happen to have a substantial supply. A lot of pharmacies, the insulins just went, their fridges.
Yeah.
Once the fridges went out, that supply kind of. So, and in our case, we started supplying insulins, and that was also another controversial decision because we were like rationing that as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of kind of thinking back to pharmacy school and all those ethics classes that they made us take.
Right.
It's like, well, you're never going to use this,
Right.
But, and all of a sudden you're faced with a situation. It's like, well, who do I service? And is the life that has been my client for 10 years more important than this other life? And at the end of the day, for us, it's all life is equally valuable, right? So we made it work. There were some pharmacies that called us and said, "Hey, Sultan, we obviously have been in the industry for a while, and they're like, Sultan, all my inventory is going to go bad. I'm just going to store it at your pharmacy, and if you need to use it, just use it." And so there was a lot of like coming together as well. So
Nice.
So that's good. Always nice to have.
Pharmacy tends to do that. We tend to come together.
Yeah,
We lead.
Yeah.
We lead.
Pharmacy leads. It certainly does, and that was, that was visible. We had pharmacists going out. We had a lot of government was a little slow on this, but they eventually allowed licensed physicians and healthcare practitioners from the States to come in and practice in Puerto Rico. So there was a lot of coordination going on. There were doctors and PAs coming into the island, and we were coordinating with a lot of them and coordinating those efforts, so they would help at certain nursing homes. So really, it wasn't just Puerto Rico. It was the whole, we felt a lot of support coming from stateside providers as well. And our pharmacy included several folks from the industry, that we have close relationships with, offered to fly medications down to supplement our inventories while the wholesalers were closed. So really very, very, it's one of those proud moments when you look back and you see everyone coming together and, sometimes it's hard to kind of think of those moments, but they exist, and I know when it needs to, it'll happen. So it's always good to know that.
For sure. So let's say I'm in a part of the country that I'm not too worried about hurricanes. You know, I'm in Iowa, I'm in Nebraska, wherever I'm at, right? But things can happen. You still can have tornadoes or other things that you just can't anticipate, acts of God, if you will. So what are like if you were talking to one of those pharmacies, like what are like the top 4 or 5 things that you're like, you have to get this done, you have to get this in place because you just don't know?
So I think the first thing definitely is power. You know, the days of manually doing things are long gone, and you have to plan on extended power outages. And I mean, just recently in Houston, you know, power got knocked out, and you were 10, 14 days without power in certain communities. So, you know, take whatever you think is a reasonable time and double or triple that, and you know, try to plan around that. If you operate a larger operation, I would definitely recommend running having dual generators. It helps because that was one thing that we instituted after the hurricane, because when we had to do downtime to do maintenance, or even at night, you could run your generator during the day, like a higher capacity generator that operates all your needs during the day, and then you can have a smaller one that runs at night, just powering the fridges and maybe some other machine equipment. So that'd be the first area I'd focus on, is power. Second's connectivity. A lot of folks had power, but they didn't have redundant connectivity. So what happened to a lot of folks is a lot of pharmacies started to dispense, but if you're not billing for it, for 2 or 3 weeks out, I mean, cash flow is not flowing in, right? I mean, so it's a big challenge. So today,
the PBMs didn't help. Sorry about that.
I'm not going to get sidetracked on that.
Sorry about that.
Connectivity was a big issue, obviously. And today you've got a lot of options. I mean, in addition to the 3 fiber connections that we have a fixed wireless connection, and we have a Starlink satellite uplink.
I was going to ask about Starlink,
so
if that's an answer.
Back in 2017, but
right.
I'm not plugging any provider, but anything you can get that is not land-based, because a lot of land-based communications fail because of power.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're using your local cable company, there's relay stations across the point. At some point that power is gonna. So you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
You might have power in the pharmacy, but you're not gonna have connectivity. And with everything on the cloud and all the things that you need today, definitely. So power is the first. Connectivity is the second. Third is definitely inventory. You have to secure your inventory. Make sure you have enough inventory to supply your patients. I recommend at least 2 weeks. In our market, we try to, during hurricane season, if our storm's coming in, we surge our inventory up to 4 weeks to service everyone for 4 weeks. I know it's kind of a added holding cost.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that PBMs never think about.
Right. Of course not. Right.
But it is something that you
try to run lean, just cash flow in general. But
right.
Obviously, if you can anticipate, but sometimes
And with a hurricane, you'd have the extra leeway.
Yeah.
It's
a couple days.
A couple of days, but if there are times of the year where you're more prone to those, or if you know that there's a storm, snowstorm coming in, and you normally run on a week's supply, maybe you want to get an extra week. Mm-hmm. I think every pharmacy has to kind of assess where they're at and what their population needs are, and kind of do that. So we talk power, talk connectivity, we've talked inventory. The third thing is logistics, so staffing. And one of the reasons we were able to respond very quickly was that we had our internal drivers as well as our external couriers. But the external courier companies didn't respond until 2 or 3 weeks after the hurricane. UPS was down for 30 days in Puerto Rico. Like, their warehouse got hit, and the roof got torn off. It was just, they didn't have anywhere to operate from. So. And I remember when they resumed operations, it was like there was a glaring hole in their roof, right? So, if you're using third-party couriers, reach out to them and ask them what their emergency response plan is. What are you doing to kind of be ready?
Worst case scenario.
And we've done that. We've worked with our third-party logistics companies since then, because when the storm happened, to be quite honest, if we didn't have our internal drivers, we would have been sitting ducks.
Yeah.
So definitely logistics is the fourth. And then the fifth is the staff. You really have to work with staff morale. I remember one of our longest staff members when she came to the pharmacy the day after, and when she saw that the pharmacy was open and lights were on and everything was on, she just broke in. She ran up to me, hugged me, and she broke into tears because on the way to the pharmacy, all she had seen was pure devastation.
Yeah, it's like a war zone.
It's like a war zone. So working with your staff, having the amenities to kind of, I mean, obviously it's an emergency situation. You're not going to be, paying for massages and stuff like that.
Right.
And I know some companies put dryers on washers in their parking lots, and they were allowing staff to do their laundry there because it was
there
was no way to do laundry. So, again, focus on the staff, know where they are, the things that they need, have a plan, like just supply them with the food. Since that storm, we've actually, we didn't have showers in the pharmacy. Like we had bathrooms. So when we did our last remodel, we put showers in. Why? We hope we never have to use them, but in case of an emergency like Maria, well, at least our employees would have a place to take a decent shower,
Yeah.
So all these things, those 5 areas are probably the 5 that I would focus on. Obviously, having backups to your computer systems and all that is very important. But, these are 5 that I would say are probably overlooked and underappreciated.
Yeah.
You take these for granted. When power's on, you take it for granted.
Yeah.
Take the internet for granted. So
sure.
These are the areas that you want to really focus on and make sure that you put a plan in place for whatever is appropriate for your region of the world, of the country, right? So if snowstorms are the thing, well, maybe you have to make sure you have enough vehicles with snow tires, right? So really, it's about understanding what your comes back to what being a pharmacist is all about.
Yeah.
Understanding your patient's core needs, your community, what the challenges that they face are, and working to mitigate those.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Well, they say it doesn't kill us, makes us stronger, and I know you guys certainly are stronger from that experience. So sorry that obviously you guys had to go through that, but very proud of you and proud of MedPlus for being there, being that beacon of light for your patients during that horrible time.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Chad. We really feel like blessed, and for them, whatever amount of planning you do, there's always a little bit of luck in there, and we certainly were more fortunate than some others. But we definitely learned a lot, and I'm glad to be here to be able to share that with your audience and hopefully help them plan for their emergency, which we hope never happens. But
right, we hope it never happens again. Right,
it does. Have them to be as ready as possible to meet those needs.
Absolutely,
that's awesome.
Any closing words?
No, I know you're coming to our annual meeting in November. You're speaking on a panel on a different topic on artificial intelligence, but if you enjoyed this conversation, Sultan will be happy to talk to you out at our meeting.
Absolutely.
And we're glad to have you there. And this is a great podcast. This was awesome. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, bud.
Great.
All right. Well, we'll see everybody on the next Our Experience.